All right, thanks everyone for being a part of our Ames Community School District State of the District. So this is our second presentation today, and one that we are live streaming on YouTube and via Zoom. We have a number of slides to go through for our presentation, and I think we're just gonna get started. So I'll kick it over to Dr. Vincent.
Thank you so much, and thank you for those of you that are taking time to watch our presentation this evening. Our intent as we started these conversations in the community several months ago was just to provide an opportunity to exchange information, share some of the current events in the district, and provide an opportunity for any question and answer sort of session that the audience might like to have. So with that, we'll go through just a few overview facts of the district. Some of you may know that Ames is what we would consider one of the larger districts in the state. We are about the 21st largest, and there are about 330 some districts currently. Many, of course, would be under 1,000 students. We are what I call a great size, large enough to have some economies of scale, but small enough to really be personalized in the educational experience that we offer. Some additional facts about the district that you may know. We have about 5,000 students, about 700 staff, and a budget of about $128 million. In addition to just some of those basic facts, we wanted to spend a little bit of time this evening talking about, so how do you count students? You'd think it might be pretty straightforward to say that we have a little over 5,000 students, but there are some initial nuances of that number that we want to make sure that we cover this evening. So, Director Schmidt?
Yeah, so on this slide, we're going to take a look at certified enrollment. So in the state of Iowa, across the state, every district on October 1, where students are at in the state and what district they are in, that counts for that district's certified enrollment. And when it comes to presentations, really love to show graphs. And so on this particular graph, we're looking at certified enrollment that dates back all the way to the 80s. And so you can see there was a peak in the 90s. We had a decline in enrollment. And then over the last several years, with the exception of last year due to COVID, we started to see that enrollment creep up again. And so as we noted on the previous slide, where we have, over 5,000 students in the district, the certified enrollment is counting 4,487 students. And so certified enrollment is a part of a weighted formula with the Department of Education where, not every student counts as one, but it's, like I said, it's a weighted formula. And so different students can count differently. And what we use this enrollment for is primarily for budget purposes. This next slide takes a look at open enrollment, and this is one that I particularly like to include on presentations like this. I've lived in Ames for a really long time, and prior to my role within the district, I always heard this misconception that a lot of students were leaving the Ames Community School District. And then when I got into this position, I found that the exact opposite was true. And so I share this slide just to show that we have a lot more students that are choosing to come into the Ames Community School District. They live outside of our district, but choose to open enroll in versus the number of students who are choosing to open enroll out. And so that first line up top in the orange, 404 students, again, are choosing to come into our district, and 233 students have open enroll out. Over the last couple of years, we have seen that gap narrow a bit, but again, a lot more students are loving to come in. And then this final slide, I think, is just a great snapshot of what our district looks like. And I leave it up here just so that we can take it in. We can see the range of enrollment that we do have for our students within our district. And just taking a look at this, I think just really offers a great snapshot of our district.
Good evening. Thanks for being here tonight. We appreciate your time. My name is Jeff Hawkins. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of the district. I get to talk with you a little bit about our incoming superintendent, Dr. Julius Lawson. So as you may know, coming into this year, our school board, one of their primary tasks, if you will, of this year was to find a permanent superintendent for our district. They recruited, if you will, or retained HYA as a search firm, and began right away the process of collecting input from our community about what we needed in our next superintendent. So there were, I believe, over 1,200 survey responses from our community and about 300 people who met in focus groups to try to give input on what exactly are we needing in Ames for our next superintendent. That created a leadership profile that then HYA used to identify and recruit candidates to meet that profile of what our community was desiring. Ultimately, a pool of 6 candidates were brought before our board in early January. Our board narrowed those to 2, and then again, we're super excited that Dr. Lawson will be beginning with our system on July 1. He's been in the district already to visit some schools, talk with teachers and students, get to meet with some parent groups. I know he'll be in the district again before July 1, but his official start date will be July. And again, we're super excited to have him aboard and the next steps that we'll have with him.
One of our largest celebrations in the Ames Community School District is our new high school construction project nearing completion. So if you've had an opportunity to drive across Ridgewood, you know it's a building that you absolutely cannot miss. A quick recap of how we got here. In 2018, the Ames community approved a bond referendum at an 85% clip. And I, always try to keep track of other school districts and what their bond referendums go for. And I'll be honest, I've never seen an 85% number or 85% of the community approving a bond referendum such as this. It's a $137 million project, and we're looking to open it later this year. Here's a quick snapshot of what the next couple months of this project looks like. So, we broke ground several years ago. Construction has been taking place, and now we're starting to see that light at the end of the tunnel. So today is the last day for the Ames Municipal Pool that is on the campus of Ames High School. Tomorrow, demolition will start on that pool, and they need to get that done earlier so that they can do completion of the back part of the high school. They're going to use the spring to move boxes and equipment over into the building. They're going to use the summer to continue and finalize that process. And we're looking at August 1 starting to occupy the building. Just last week, I had an opportunity to walk through the building again. It had been several months since I've been in there. And so I'm going to walk through some of these images. In the upper left-hand corner, that's the main entrance to the Ames High School. And when they designed the building, they did it in a really smart way. So that right when you walk in, we have this large common area. And that's the upper center picture. So in that common area, students will be able to use that during the day, but it's a wonderful space that it'll be able to double as a community area for people who are coming to a basketball game or to a musical, or just like what we had last Friday, we had both going on at the same time. So when you're in that common area, if you move to the left, that's where you'll see our competition gymnasium, which is the image in the lower left-hand corner. And then up and to the right of that common area is the entrance to our auditorium, which you're able to see from in the upper right-hand corner. On the bottom, on the right, that's an image of our pool as it currently stands as of last week. And then that center image on the bottom is an image of our academic pod. So we have a number of these academic pods that have communal space in the middle of them where students can collaborate and get together, and then they have classrooms around the outside of that. And so we have a number of these pods. They're currently in a range of process on being completed, but this particular one was one of the first ones that was completed, and it has gone through the final checklist, so to speak. They were doing the deep clean when I was going through it last week.
I get the opportunity to talk with you a little bit about our Department of Education performance profiles and some of the indicators of our academic achievement. We've got some good news in that regard. As far as our Iowa school performance profile is concerned, all of our schools saw an increase in their score and their level of performance. We have 2 schools rated as high performing. We have 3 schools rated as commendable and 3 schools rated as acceptable. Additionally, in those Iowa School Performance Profiles, we saw that in every area we were at or above the state average, and above the state average when it came to graduation rate, percent proficient in reading and math, on the ISAS, post-secondary readiness, in completing our college coursework. So some really good signs for the district when it came to that. In addition to those good signs, this graphic shows a comparison between our ISAS scores, our standardized assessment that we give in the spring. It shows a comparison between the 18-19 and the 2020-21 year. We didn't give them in the spring of 20 because of the pandemic. And what you see there, again, there's some good signs, but you also see some need for growth, right? So when we look at that, those yellow bars, for the most part, we see those yellow bars of lack of proficiency increasing. And although we're doing well compared to the state, we have some growth to do in getting all of our students to a level of proficiency. So some success, but also some challenges for us as a district to see better achievement for all of our students. One of the ways that we work to intervene for students in order to address those lack of proficiency is through various interventions that we're providing for students. ESSER is a funding source that was provided by the federal government and state government in order to address the needs of schools throughout the pandemic, including the need to recover lost learning. So there's a few interventions here that we've been delivering to kids that I want to report out to you as a community about. AmeriCorps Reading is an intervention that happens during the school day. It's designed for kindergarten through third grade students who are showing that they're not proficient on their reading yet. We're getting really good results from that intervention, as the research base would suggest. So our results follow that research base. But over 91% of our students who are receiving that intervention have a positive trajectory for their graphs when it comes to their reading skills. Last summer, we hosted a summer school both for K-8 students as well as for 9-12. This data is for our 9-12 students. We had 125 students come. They earned 263 high school credits. 11 of the students who came to summer school were able to complete their graduation requirements or get their diploma as a result of coming to summer school. And then we have some after school tutoring occurring right now as well. We had reading tutoring occur this past fall. And this spring now that reading tutoring will continue, as well as we'll supplement that with some math tutoring. And again, we got really good results from our reading tutoring. The students who received the intervention, there was about 146 of them. In almost all examples, except for one grade level, we saw the results that we use to measure their growth double that of not only the typical growth, but the growth of their peers that weren't receiving intervention. So again, all in all, the interventions that we're using to address that lack of proficiency are going really well. What we need to and what we are working to do is to grow our capacity to offer those interventions more broadly, as well as to address the tier 1 instruction issue as to why so many students would begin that process not being proficient. I also get the opportunity to talk with you about some really great things going on in our district, right? There's lots of things going on for us to be very proud of, including academic achievements. I believe we had 31 students over the past 2 years that were identified as National Merit finalists. I believe we had 14 this year. Those are amazing numbers. 27 students selected to the All-State Music Science Olympiad that is going on and getting national bids. We've got a swim team that has been either the champion or the runner-up the last 12 years in a row, and a state-bound basketball team tomorrow night, right? The number 1 team in the state that is, at least I would say, the odds-on favorite to bring home the trophy. So just lots and lots of things going on in our schools for us to be proud of.
As we trend towards the final couple slides, we will have an opportunity for questions at the end. If anyone does have any questions, if you are on Zoom, all you have to do is raise your hand on the bottom and then you'll be able to ask a question. But we're going to start to move towards the final slides for this presentation. So I just wanted to offer that as an opportunity. So Dr. Hawkins talked about the number of celebrations that we have, and it is my honor and privilege to be able to share a lot of those stories through our communications channel. And so this slide just outlines the number of ways that you can stay connected to our school district. Our website is obviously one of them. We're currently in the process of redesigning our website. And so later this year, when we're able to launch that, it'll be a really exciting thing for us as a district and my department in particular. If you do live in Ames, I hope you do take an opportunity on a quarterly basis to take in our amazing magazine. We do print 12,000 of those on a quarterly basis, and they end up in mailboxes. And it's always great to hear bits and pieces of feedback on how people get information about the school district. It's not lost on me, again, before I came into this position, that I didn't always have a connection to the schools. And so this is one way that we can connect with our broader community to help share a lot of the things that are happening within our district. If you're a podcast listener, I encourage you to check out our Amazing Education podcast. And of course, we are active on social media as well: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We just launched a LinkedIn profile, so we're excited about that as well. But just as much as we do celebrate all of the things in our district, and I think that we should take great pride in that, we have to lean in and embrace the current challenges that we have. And so we've listed a couple here that we can talk through real briefly.
To anyone, I don't think that one of our biggest challenges this year has been staff shortages. We had positions that we wanted to hire and were unable to fill. We are hopeful that we have been very aggressive in starting the hiring process for next year, and hopeful that that will be an improved situation for us coming this fall. But that certainly has impacted our ability to provide all of the services and types of educational opportunities that we would have liked to. The pandemic also affected us. We have to acknowledge that as students came back to us this school year in a regular setting on a full-time basis, we needed to do some reteaching, and that work continues in terms of how is it that we interact socially with each other. We've tried to use routines and structures, and I'm very excited about some of the work in our teaching and learning department to have a comprehensive way to improve upon the systems we already have in place, but a very intentional way to address social emotional learning for the students in the district. And then the last one, we of course are at that time of year for school districts where we are setting the budget for next year. Ames has the great benefit of a strong economy and a high proportion of business and tax base to support the schools, but we also have limits that are established by the state. And so we often find ourselves in the unique position of having cash, but not having authority to spend it. Iowa does operate on an equalization formula so that all schools spend roughly the same amount per pupil, which I happen to be a strong supporter of. But as a result, and you saw the early slides of student enrollment where we had the dip due to the pandemic, we have to adjust our budget accordingly. So we will be making budget reductions this spring at the same time that we anticipate in years ahead that likely will rebound. But those are the primary challenges we faced. And as Director Schmidt and Dr. Hawkins have stated, we want to close our presentation and get to some Q&A, but we definitely want to say thank you to those of you that are taking time to listen to this, and thanks to our community and our families for their continued partnership. And of course, we could not do what we need to do if we didn't have the amazing staff that we have working here every day. So thanks for taking a little bit of time out of your day to join us, and we look forward to any questions you might have.
Ready? You give me a mic, or do they at home going to be able to hear me? I don't know. You have two people at home listening too, or three? Okay, all right. So I got this in the mail from the district, and it talks about something called critical consciousness. Probably should put it up to my mouth so you can hear me at home. So I got this from the district, and it talks about critical consciousness. It doesn't really give a whole lot of information about critical consciousness, the intellectual roots of it, where it comes from. Would anybody like to elaborate on critical consciousness? And then what is the other kind of consciousness that you can have if you don't have a critical consciousness?
We're going to invite our Director of Teaching and Learning up. This is part of the work that obviously the entire district is engaged in, but it's a key part of our longer range planning for the district. And I would just open the conversation with an intent. You see our purpose statement on the wall, those of you that are here, to be an equitable system that allows, I'll just shorten it a little bit, every student and every learner within the system to thrive. Those are my paraphrases. So we recognize that all of us have unique backgrounds, unique experiences. Our learning styles are different, and we want to make sure we're doing what we can to support our staff and our students to be in this diverse world, which we all are a part of. So some very specific issues around critical consciousness and the ongoing training that we're doing. Pleased to welcome Erin Miller, our Director of Teaching and Learning, to add additional comments.
Yeah, I think what Paula said is really critical about our identities, right? And what identities do we hold, and how does that create a worldview that we might experience differently than somebody else, right? Like I've had a lot of lived experiences in my life that are very different than maybe even Dr. Hawkins, even though we share some similar identities. So really thinking about first asking us to learn about ourselves and what that journey is for us as part of that critical consciousness. So before I encountered, I'll just give you a personal story might help it when you asked about other kinds of consciousness, right? And so when I grew up all the way through college, like I sort of just assumed that the way I saw the world was the way everybody sees the world, which was maybe a really naive thing to say. And so it wasn't until I started learning about how the experiences I had and my identity shaped how I saw the world, I started to realize, gosh, there's probably lots of other people who see the world really differently. And so how do we interact and create safe learning spaces for kids who might hold various different identities? So my experiences as a white, female, Catholic, middle class, all of those things affect my worldview. So when we're thinking about critical consciousness, that's really where it starts, is interrogating our own personal identities.
Intellectual roots of this. This is Paulo Freire, right? And this is standpoint theory, standpoint epistemology. So that's why I was asking. I've been doing a lot of reading. I didn't know where this came from. I'd never heard of it before, but that's Freire, right? Critical pedagogy, all that stuff. Okay, thank you. I'm gonna let. I mean, I don't
Okay.
monopolize the time.
Yeah.
He might have like 20 different questions he wants to ask.
Any other questions from anyone? All right. No? All right. You have a final question you'd like to ask us?
Well, I can ask lots of questions. I haven't read this over here, so I'll go read this and see if I have any questions about this, because you guys pointed to this.
Perhaps at this point, given that we don't have that many questions, again, just a thank you to folks who have tuned in, and we will stick around and answer questions. We have a few people here in the room, but with that, thank you so much, and thanks to everyone here for participating to share this information with the community. Have a good evening.